I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Board Secretary, is this meeting been advertised in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act?
Yes, it has, Mr.
Can I
McEnroe.
have a roll call, please?
Mr. Balfour.
Here.
Mr. Backo.
Here.
Mr. Bichado.
Here.
Mr. Brzezinski.
Here.
Mr. Syak.
Here.
Mr. Pinto.
Here.
Mrs. Rakuya.
Here.
Mrs. Kraft and Mr. Mack.
Here.
President, can you please inform the public of our executive session agenda?
Under executive session this evening, the board discussed under negotiation, Sayreville Education Association contract. Under student discipline, HIB report number 57. Under attorney-client privilege, SEA member, Sayreville Education Association member suspension, student discipline hearing. Under personnel, director of curriculum and instruction, and agenda item.
Thank you. Under correspondence, everybody should have received the monthly technology and monthly maintenance work order reports. Anybody has any questions, comments on those? If not, I see we got the minutes back up. Everybody should have received, saw posted the meeting minutes of March 26th, April 9th, and April 23rd. Anybody have any comments, corrections, or deletions on the minutes? Mrs. Patko?
Question.
Yes.
On the minutes for the executive session, you have,
Which meeting?
Which date?
the one I'm looking at is April 23rd. And you put a sentence in there that says personnel including but not limited to. And then you have a list. What does that mean? Does that mean that we could?
That was what was directed by your attorney at that meeting, to include that statement. That was his specific wording for that meeting.
So does that mean we could have talked about something that's not listed?
No, I
What
believe
does
what
that mean?
occurred that evening was there were items that someone may have wanted to raise, and we didn't know exactly what the discussion was, so we indicated including but not limited to. Those were the directions I received that
From the
evening.
attorney?
Yes?
I'll ask.
It's always the attorney.
I'll see the attorney.
Student council representative, Mr. He's not here. Yes, I need a motion to accept and file the superintendent's. Do you want to hold on to that one? Okay. Need a motion to accept and
So
file.
moved.
I need a second.
Mr. McEnroe?
Yes.
1 second, please.
Sure, go ahead.
On the approval of minutes on the March 26th, I'll be abstaining. I was absent that meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have a motion, need a second?
Yes.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
The 23rd, Mr. Brzezinski, you said?
March 26th.
March 26th.
Mr. Balko?
Yes.
Mrs. Backo?
Yes.
Mr. Bichado?
Yes.
Mr. Brzezinski?
Yes, with the exception just of
Mr. Syak?
Yes.
Mrs. DePinto?
Yes.
Mrs. Rakuya?
Yes.
Mrs. Kraft?
Yes.
And Ms. McEnroe.
Yes. Mr. Vice President, our district highlights.
Congratulations to Sayreville War Memorial High School senior Diana Fierros for winning first place in New Jersey at the Clay in Mind competition in April. Clay in Mind is a juried high school ceramic competition. Deanna's project will be on display at the Clay Studio in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania from May 3rd to May 11, 2013. It is truly a great honor for Diana to have her artwork displayed in the gallery. She also won the right to attend a Raku firing workshop at the end of June. Below is a picture of her award-winning project, and everyone in the public has a copy of that. It is with great pride that we inform you that the Samsel Upper Elementary School Green Team is the recipient of an award. Elise Barone, recycling coordinator for the Borough of Sayreville, submitted an application to the New Jersey Clean Communities Kids Teens Awards, and the Green Team program was selected because this program was deemed extraordinary. Therefore, they are going to receive a $1,000 scholarship from the New Jersey Food Council. The Kid Teens Awards were created in 2003 by the New Jersey Clean Communities Council to promote an awareness of litter and litter-related issues among people under the ages of 18, encourage the community service in solving the litter problem, and foster an understanding of the state's natural beauty and habitats. Congratulations to the Green Team for this very honorable accomplishment.
Thank you, Mr. Syak. Dr. O'Fallon, can you take us through your report, please?
Thank you, Mr. McEnroe. A1 is a use of the high school for a football camp. Any questions with A1? With none, moving to B, finance. There's a bill list resolution there. A disposal of a lot of computer equipment as noted. And the rest of the resolutions are the part of our reorganization. The first resolution, number 3, is Mr. DeAndrea will be, once again, the board secretary. The next resolution, he will also be our public agency compliance officer. Mr. DeAndrea will also be the number 5 qualified purchasing agent for the district. Number 6 is Ms. Zeichner, is going to be, again, the affirmative action officer. Our board attorney, law firm of Schwartz, Simon, Edelstein, and Celso will once again be our board attorneys. On page 6, number 9, the president and the secretary of the board and the treasurer of school funds are hereby authorized as persons to sign the checks that go out to the various people for payment. Official newspaper, number 10, is the Home News Tribune and the Star Ledger. Our official depositories are PNC Bank, MBIA, and Amboy National Bank. Moving to number 12, our auditor, once again, will be Samuel Klein and Company. Number 13 is to advertise for bids that Mr. DeAndrea will be allowed to for the district landscaping services, which is done every year in the cafeteria and food services. Number 14 is to approve the assistant superintendent, and the school business administrator, as well as the board members, to this year's New Jersey School Boards Association workshop in October. That's held in Atlantic City. Project Serve is a grant that we applied for the Sandy damages that we've had, and the government has awarded us $67,049. I thank Mr. DeAndrea and Ms. Zeichner for putting that grant together. So it's an extra $67,000 that we did not have in relationship to some of the damages that were caused by the Sandy. The second is a requirement that we must have for monitoring, and we are approving the preschool curriculum, the Mind Preschool Curriculum, which is a packaged curriculum that we are purchasing tonight for $31,750.
Dr. O'Connor,
Yes, sir.
there was a question. We're amending a previous approval, the increase is by $3,000.
That, any questions with section B?
Dr. O'Connor, B7, I'm going to abstain on.
Okay.
Mrs. Backer, go ahead.
Mr. DeAndrea, I haven't seen any financial reports for the cafeteria in a while. Are we just not getting them, or are they not being prepared?
They're included monthly.
Yeah, I haven't seen one in a while. Can you get me this
The
last
board
one?
has been approving them every month, and they're part of the board secretary's report on a monthly basis also.
I haven't been getting one.
It's on, yeah, it's on the
Get
board.
me the last
Yeah, it's
one.
on the portal every month.
Yeah, I know, but I haven't, I need to, I can't.
It's behind the cafeteria bill list. You get the cafeteria.
Yeah, I haven't,
Okay.
see, it hasn't been attached.
Let's
My
solve the
bill
problem.
list,
The
okay?
request is Mrs. Backer would like those on paper.
Yeah.
No, I know that, that's why I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure.
I haven't
but
seen it attached
I'll
to the
check.
bill list.
Okay, anything else? Catherine?
Moving forward, section C, personnel, non-certified. There's an unpaid medical leave. There's a transfer of Joe Hospodar as the new confidential secretary to the board secretary, confidential secretary for the business administrative board secretary. Want to congratulate Joe on her appointment. Retroactively, full-time paraprofessionals as listed, a couple extra hours that we need for different placements that we have. 4 is professional days as noted, and 6 is our substitute list, and, I'm sorry, 5 is our substitute, 6 is a lateral transfer as noted. Any questions with that section? With none, moving to D, personnel, certified. I want to wish Pat Daly a very nice retirement. She's been with us a very long time, and she's done a very good job at a Triton school. We're going to miss Mr. Resignation, we will also miss, unfortunately, Mr. Fury is moving on. to another district, and he will be moving on as of July 1st, 2013. We have another resignation, a few child rearing leaves, a retroactive unpaid medical leave as noted, and next is the transfer of Mr. Byrne, the principal of Baldwin School, as our new Director of Special Services, starting on July 1st, 2013. Good luck, Mr. Byrne. I know you're here somewhere. There he is right there. Thank God for Mr. Byrne. It's a position that we've been looking for a while. We really are very satisfied with moving Mr. Byrne over. Here's an acceptance of our grievance proposal as noted. Grievances 24, 25, 34, 35, 37, and 41 were amicably settled out of PERC, which was very good. Number 9 is our professional days as noted. An appointment replacement teacher as noted. Number 10. Number 11 is our new school psychologist, which will start in July. And number 12 is a substitute list. Any questions with that section? With none, moving to E, policy, no report. F, curriculum. We only have one report, number 57, on the HIP reports. Recommendation of Board Disciplinary Committee as a result of the student disciplinary hearing held on May 7, 2013, be approved. Any questions with that section F? With none, moving to G, co-curriculum. There's a approval of a new club at the high school, rescheduling of the tag trip to Boston from, I believe it was last month, to June 7th through the 9th, and approve the Eisenhower Elementary Art and Music Show, which is May 23rd. Any questions with section G? With none, moving forward to H. Waiver of transportation is noted. Addendums to transportation contracts as noted. Page 14, number 4, there are 11 trips that are looking for approval tonight, and one board bus for the SEA members during the Sayreville Memorial Day Parade, which will be held on Memorial Day, to take those members to the parade and back. And there's also, the last resolution is request to approve board buses for graduation for those parents that need to be transported back and forth from Kennedy Park on June 21st. That concludes my report, Mr. McDonough.
Thank you, Dr. O'Connor. Any board comment or questions on the agenda items only before I open up the public for comment? Hearing none, at this time, I'd like to open up the public for any questions or comments on the agenda you just heard. Be mindful, I will open up again for the public for any business that may come before this board. So this time, does anybody have any questions or comments on the agenda items? If you do, please come up to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept and file the superintendent's report. I need a second?
Second.
And now I need a roll call.
I apologize.
Mrs. Raguya.
Mr. Balka?
Yes, Mr. Clerk, I move it.
Mrs. Backo?
Yes.
Mr. Bishop?
Yes.
Mr. Brzezinski?
Yes.
Mr. Sire?
Yes.
Mrs. DePinto?
Yes.
Mrs. Rakuya?
Yes.
Mrs. Pratt?
Yes.
And Mr. McDonough?
Yes. A delegate to the New Jersey School Boards Association.
We have our annual delegate assembly coming up on Saturday the 17th, and I just want to share with you the recommendations that NJSBA's resolution subcommittee is recommending that we support. I'll be voting this way unless the board directs me to otherwise. There's a proposed change in the bylaws of the association, given the fact that so many boards have moved their elections in November. The NJSBA is recommending that their officer elections also be moved to November from May to coincide with the new boards. So if no one objects to that, I'll be voting to support that. The 4 resolutions, and I think it's going to be an interesting delegate assembly. There was a recommendation that was proposed by Manchester, and I'll read it. It says that the New Jersey School Boards Association believes that gun control measures, including a ban on assault weapons, a limit on the size of clips, magazines, and mandatory criminal background checks for all types of weapons purchases are needed to protect the children of New Jersey. The resolution subcommittee is recommending that we approve the following language instead. The NJSBA believes that in the vigorous support and rigid enforcement of federal and state laws pertaining to the sale, possession, and/or use of firearms and ammunition, And the NJSBA further believes that the federal and state government should be encouraged to enact additional statutes and regulations as determined necessary by the NJSBA School Security Task Force, which will be issuing its recommendations upcoming in November. And the reason for that is that NJSBA is not an expert on gun control. We're not an expert on weapons of any sort. And we felt that we should have a position that basically works to advocate for student safety, but does not get into specifics with regard to how guns should be controlled, because that's not our area of expertise. So I'll be supporting the second recommendation unless the board objects. Resolution number 2 basically was from Ridgewood, and it says that NJSBA believes that each local board of education should have the right to establish compensation for its chief school administrator and have the flexibility to adjust it. Basically, they're looking for NJSBA to roll back or repeal the superintendent's salary caps. The substitute language which NJSBA is recommending is that NJSBA, before taking a position on this, study this, report back to in the November 2013 DA with a recommendation based upon what they're seeing in terms of attrition and change from superintendents. So I'll be supporting that recommendation as opposed to the original language, again, unless anyone objects. And then the third resolution is that NJSBA believes that there should be a public hearing required anytime a municipality is going to move their local school board election to November in place of the board. And that's something that they're advocating that we support, and I would agree with it. If a town is going to make a decision to move a school board election in place of the Board of Education, the board should at least be given advance notice and an opportunity to appear.
Have many towns done that?
I know of, I think, 2 or 3, but it has not been the majority. The majority changes have occurred by local boards, and I believe at this point 90% of the local boards in the state have moved their elections to November.
Do you know which few those towns were? Do you know any of them off the top of your head?
No, I
Did
don't.
it?
I can find out from the board, but you're talking about the ones that the council has
Right, yeah.
actually moved? Yeah, I know there were about 2 or 3, but I can't remember which ones. Anyone have any opposition or any recommendations to that? All right, that's the way I'll be voting. And also, I will be unable to attend the November delegate assembly due to my brother's wedding, so I will need a substitute for that. I know Mr. McEnroe and Mr. Bishada have already done this. If anyone else would like to substitute for me and has not done it, if you would like to come with me in next Saturday, May 17th, to get your feet wet, you're more than welcome.
Tom likes to know.
Okay. Well, he's already got his feet wet, so
Speaker went, so he can go in November.
he can fill in immediately.
I'm glad to help. Thank you. All right, anything else?
That's it.
Okay, what do we have? No committee reports. Okay, on the discussion. Ms. DeAndre, do you want to take the first one, the sale of school logo merchandise at store? A little background information is that a couple of board members have noticed that Bomber apparel was being sold in stores without the authorization of the school district. As a result of that, our lawyer had submitted a patent that we own the logo and the rights to that, and letters were sent to those people selling the merchandise to cease and desist. Since then, this has developed.
Just basically, they reached out to our attorney since they were in contact with them when that settlement, and we received all the merchandise. Ohio Pile, I apologize. Reached out, and before we get into any further discussion, at that time, the board said, no, you weren't interested, and I just like to know, is the mindset's still the same, and then we'll direct no that you're not interested.
What do they offer?
Not interested in
Are we
that.
getting 90%? I mean, what do we get?
No, and again, no discussion has occurred because the last time through, the board has said no, the letter came through, and I'm not going to start negotiating and then find out I do all this work and there's not even an interest by the board to do it. The last time through, I believe we received only about 10% of whatever the merchandise sales were.
So is the merchant offering to,
They're looking to see if the board is interested in allowing them to start selling Sayreville items that have the Sayreville Bomber logo in the Walmarts, the motels and all, which is what we last time sued them for because they didn't contact us, they just did it. And now they're formally approaching saying, is there an interest?
I don't feel that there's an interest. I would rather see our students, our team make our profit or their profit.
That's why I'm bringing it, make sure that that is the feeling.
So you're bringing it because they sent another request?
Yes.
Is that why it's back?
Yes.
I mean, before the board would entertain something like that, I want to make sure that Mr. Brown has checked with the booster clubs and made sure that, you know, they're okay with it. Because like Mrs. Strapp says, if anything, it's going to eat against their profits.
Yes, and that's
Which is why
basically,
we went.
basically why you
patent.
said no and went for your patent.
Right.
So I'm just making sure that that's, and from what I'm hearing, that is, and we're done.
Everybody
Thank
agree
you.
with that? Okay, that was easy. Okay, next item for discussion, which is I'm assuming why we have so many people here tonight, is school redistricting. Just to give you a little genesis of how this developed. If you live or work in this town, you understand that you know, our population is growing, especially in the school-aged children. Eisenhower School particularly is hit hard due to developments right across the road in Lemire, which is still not built out. In my other capacity, I've actually been on the planning board longer than I've been on the Board of Ed, and if you've been reading the papers, there's another development going up that used to be called the National Lead Site, which is going to include 2,000 residences. Of that 2,000, 25% of those, almost 500, are going to be 3-bedroom units. And the latest demographic study done is going to generate 300 to 350 students of school age. Don't know what configuration, what age level, but that's probably the best case scenario. So the board, in the interest of being proactive, is looking at different options on how to ease the overcrowding and not wait till it happens and then say, we have a problem. One of the solutions or alternatives was to possibly look at redistricting. And we started to, you know, we played that, that game, you know, looking at how we would do this. To me, personally, and we'll have board discussion tonight, there's two distinct things here, redistricting and overcrowding. And overcrowding can be alleviated without having to change grade configuration. So sometimes these things kind of get meshed together as it being one issue when they're actually not. It's always been my position. First of all, let me just say I'm excited to talk about education. Being on the board, I've talked about everything except that. Dirt, buildings, construction, baseball fields, football fields. And now we have probably one of the most important issues that a school board can think about, and that's how we fundamentally educate children in the lower grade levels. We had a committee of 4 people, and that was my mistake by picking an even number, so the committee was kind of deadlocked, so we never really went forward on what we wanted to do. We looked at all kinds of possibilities, and we had a public meeting. We got some input from parents and those types of things. So now we are at the point that we are today, and I think we owe it to not only parents, but to our staff, who is going to be most affected by anything that we do within the district in grade configuration. So I asked Mr. Syak to facilitate a discussion of the board to take a look at all the issues that surround doing something like this, so that we can have an educated discussion in public about the pros and cons of going in this direction. And Mr. Syak, I'm going to hand it over to you to do the facilitating and spark the discussion.
All right, thank you, Mr. Maganone. First of all, for the benefit of the public, keep in mind that beyond the committee discussion, which you've seen, the board really as a whole has not had an opportunity to discuss this, because the only way the board can discuss something is at an open public meeting. So you are at a live taping of a live show. So if the discussion starts to wander, I'm going to try to bring it back, but keep in mind, this is not scripted. So I thought the first thing that we should do as a board is reach agreement on what the goal is. What is it that we're trying to accomplish? And that might be obvious, but from what we've heard from the committee and from what we've heard from other board members, there might be some other goals out there that are kind of ancillary to this. So I've got a proposed goal statement of what I think it is we're trying to accomplish. I'm not married to it. The board's free to change it. I'm looking to start the discussion, does this statement, which the public has and the board has, reflect the intent of what we're trying to accomplish? Or is there more?
Would you like to read it?
I can read it. The Board of Education will approve a cost-effective facility solution which reduces current elementary school class sizes and provides for the accommodation of additional growth in the number of elementary classes which we can reasonably forecast within the next decade. And if there's any part of it that's unclear, ambiguous, jump in and say, look, I don't understand what that means.
I think someone's jumping in.
Someone's jumping in.
Okay. I'm okay with the accommodation of additional growth. The reduces current elementary school class size. I think we need to know what that number would be, because I remember when we looked at the numbers, there was only a handful of class sizes that were an issue. So what type of number, when you say reduce, we have class sizes as low as 20. Are we looking to reduce that number?
So maybe
I'm
you-
looking for a parameter of where we're going with the
Right,
class
we
size.
didn't really have a problem
Right, we
with
didn't have a
most
big-
class sizes.
we
That was
didn't have a
not
big problem.
our real problem.
Okay, so we don't have that data tonight.
No, the growth
With that-
was actually, somebody might have it, I figured, he's got it. We had a bigger growth issue at the committee level than we did the actual class size level. There was only a handful that were a class size issue.
Okay, so you want to propose new line, do we want to take that section out?
Well, I'm just looking, I mean, you wrote this, did you have a parameter of class size you were looking to gain?
No. And again, that's up to the board, I mean, if there's a
What's the
specific
lowest number over there?
The lowest number right now is 19.6 students.
All right, so is that a number
class.
you're looking to reduce?
And again, it's not necessarily me. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, this is a live show. And I think that's also the lowest number, correct? So I'm assuming
Right.
that
What's the
some
way to-
people are teaching classes higher than that.
Based upon the classes, Arlet has the second and third grade, based upon five classes, and it was broken down according to this number of 19.6. We're not cutting anybody in pieces and putting them in there, just to let everybody know.
Yeah.
But statistical wise, this is what the paper was given as. The highest number was Truman Kindergarten with 6 classes at 28.2. That's the highest number.
Right, and I think there was one in Eisenhower that was high, right?
Eisenhower has a
Did they have a 28 as well?
25.8 the third grade, but that number here, as opposed to the second grade coming through Eisenhower for next year, will be, let me just get my numbers here, will be a lot lower.
So would we want to change the goal statement to say which establishes an appropriate elementary school class size, which an appropriate we can define once we get the details.
But, you know, when we talk about overcrowding, we're not just talking about class size, we're talking about the number of kids in a building, the number of classrooms you have available to put kids in.
Correct?
That's the
Right,
overcrowding
which is
issue.
the growth problem.
Right, which is the growth problem.
If I
And
could,
for our
Mr.
specialist
Stein,
teachers to
I-
have classrooms.
and I know from speaking to Kevin earlier about this, I don't think you need to focus in on the exact size. Is it part of the goal that the committee met was to also reduce some of the class sizes? Not saying that it must meet 20, but is part of the goal also intended to reduce some class sizes? So those classes that are at 28 is part of the goal to reduce that down to a 23. Not establish a number tonight, but to say, is that part of the goal when moving forward in your redistricting?
Right, but when you're looking at a goal, like me personally, I could say, well, I think 28 is a high number, but does the board think 19 is a high number? I mean, if that's our range, if we're between 19 and 28, I'd be looking to see, you'd need to know that before you move forward, what type of size are you looking for?
Right, but again, is the goal to reduce from the 28? If your answer, and I believe your answer right now was yes, the wording kind of scans because part of the overall concept is to reduce class size. Not to what number, but yes, it is part of your goal to reduce the class size. So you don't need to say it has to get down to 19. That can be that can be a discussion at some other point. The focus is part of it to deal with your enrollment growth and try to reduce it. So it's not a specific number, it's an overall objective.
Mr. DeAndrea, my opinion, point blank, 28 is a high number.
Yeah, and
And
not saying that
28
it's not.
isn't a high number, and to reduce down below 28 into the lower 20s, it would be acceptable. I think everybody would
But
agree to
but
that.
I would like to know, like, what are we looking to do? I mean, I think we should have some sort of range. I mean, if we want to go lower than 28, do you want to go lower than 19? I'd
And I
like to
think,
know.
again, that's part of,
I think that will come later because I think
Later.
we would need some additional data in order to determine that.
it's hard to determine today that 20, Mr. Rashad is saying 28 is definitely too high, but then someone may say, bring it down to 15, and others may say, no. That's not part of establishing your goal. Your goal is to say we want to deal with the overcrowding, and we also want to look at class size. So it's a multi-purpose goal, not just a single-purpose goal.
But that's only if people are not happy with the numbers that we have.
Could you put down maintain or reduce class size? Depending on.
That would work. Does that work?
Both.
Because then it works for the 19 and it also
Right.
works for the 28.
Maintain the 19, reduce the
Right,
20.
right, maintain or reduce class size.
Beautiful.
Which-
Everyone okay with
Which
that?
maintains or reduces current elementary school class sizes and provides for the accommodation of additional growth.
Besides class size, what about providing classrooms for all teachers, like the specials? Like
That's the
getting the
additional growth.
specials off the carts and instead of traveling, but that they have their own classrooms as well.
Wouldn't that be an
Yes, school
additional growth?
Because I guess it's the growth that's pushing them out of the classroom.
Yeah,
Right.
it's your growth that's pushing them out.
I guess you
So
can.
yes, that would be involved in that.
All right, so we're all okay with the goal? All right. Is there anything else that we want to add in? Are there any other challenges which the board wishes to address in the scope of this solution? I think we've pretty much covered them all during that discussion. All right, so we'll move on to item B. What information do we need in order to reach a decision? And I've listed out the things that either people have mentioned to me or I could think of. They're not necessarily solutions that I personally would advocate for. And if there's something on here that for whatever reason the board says, look, we're not doing that. Under no circumstances, we're not doing that. Let's not send the administration off gathering information for something that we can't support. There's no harm in jumping up and saying, look, I don't support that. There's no way I'm gonna pursue that. So I think the first thing we would need is current and future enrollment information. Now, we've certainly got the current information, because we get that every single month.
And you have your demographers.
And we have our demographers report. Does the board need anything else with regard to that?
That's everything.
I'm just asking. So we're all good with that?
Does the demographers report have the national lead in it? Because this was done a while ago.
I believe it does, because it looked through all it looked at all developments
Right,
approved.
but that was
Might have
back when they were
changed.
talking about only having 8 students when we did this.
Yeah, but
If that has
December.
changed.
We had the report done in December.
December of
I
2012.
don't have the report with
Yeah,
me.
but didn't that change
But that changed.
since
He
then?
talked about, what's it called, Mike, the one down there by National Lab?
The point.
The point.
The point, he does
spoke
mention
about
it,
that.
400, he does mention it, that it's down the road. if you
Well,
read
their
through it,
their
he
data
does-
was,
He does mention
he
that.
used the master plan.
It
at
does-
that time.
It is in,
Yeah, 532 it calls for.
Okay,
yeah,
which is more than.
he does mention it.
Okay.
And he said that's not till 5 or 10 years down the road.
All right, so the board is then satisfied with the enrollment information that we have. Okay? And Emilio, you're getting all this down, correct? Number 2, detailed cost, physical plant, as well as staffing for the opening of Slover as a school. I don't think we have, unless the committee has got some information on that, I don't think we have that information. I know Mr. Bashada has prepared some estimates. We might want some more detail than that, I don't know. Do you want to cover what you have?
Yeah, if you're ready, what I put down here, I just figured out to get a number of students, like 240 into that school, so. What I did is I had 3 K classes, 3 first grade, 3 second, 3 third grade classes. I took a round number of benefits and salary, this is all for new staffing. You need 12 teachers, that would be $780,000. You'll need a physical education teacher, that's $65,000. You'll need an art teacher, $65,000. A music teacher, $65,000. You'll need a librarian. You'll need a nurse. You'll need at least 2 custodians. You're going to need a school principal with benefits. You'll need 2 full-time secretaries. You'll need 4 full-time, minimum 4 full-time paras. You're going to need 4 special education teachers, at least 4 part-time paras. Then you're going to need cafeteria staff also. And just going through the numbers here, I came up with about $1,905,000. That's without including the cafeteria workers. That's just staffing, a minimal amount of staffing.
And based upon when we last explored this back in '98, that number is probably of an order of magnitude correct. Does the board wish to explore that further and get more detailed calculations than that?
Yes.
Mr. Magnon, you do?
Yes.
Well,
Yes?
if you opened up Slover, which I'm an advocate of, and you move students out of other schools, you're going to take the teachers with them. So you're not going to be hiring all new teachers to put into that school. Some teachers are going to move with those students, so that number would be less.
I disagree with you,
Okay.
because of the simple fact that you're trying to create a minimum class size in one specific area with increased enrollment coming from the Point and Harbor Club.
I agree you will need more staff, but that's gonna happen regardless when your enrollment increases. The problem we have is where do you put those increased classes? We have a building, and I think, how much have we put into Slover already to upgrade it?
I think around 500,000 with it.
I wanna say $500,000 is about
Half a
right.
mil to 600,000.
And that includes the heater ventilator systems, all wireless throughout the building. Regardless what happens, Slover is going to be utilized. It has to be. The more we push this to the right, the more expensive it's going to get. And we're going to be sitting here, and we're going to say, we have an overcrowding problem, and somebody's going to say, but we have a school that you don't have any students. So it's part of our infrastructure, it's in our inventory, we're paying insurance on it, I say we use it as a school. I've always been an advocate of neighborhood schools, and I think that's an approach because, Frank, Tom, regardless of what we do, that's going to be a player down the road.
It's got to be a player down the road, I agree with you. But at the moment, in a 5-year projection, I don't see it being a player because in order for that school to be brought up to standard, you're going to spend, I'm guesstimating, $3 to $5 million just in improvements in that building to bring it up, such as the boiler, the windows. You're going to have to put a special elevator in there. You've got to rebuild the auditorium, gymnasium. You've got to redo the cafeteria. It's probably going to need a roof. There's other issues that are going to take into consideration for that building to be brought to a standard of acceptance.
So Mr. Bashad has given us his back-of-the-envelope calculation in terms of an estimate. Again, the question is, does the board wish that to be developed further by the administration and presented in detail?
I say yes.
Mrs. Pinto?
Yes.
Mr. Papa?
Yes.
Yeah, we're not committing to Slover. I'm just, if you have an interest in it, let's get the information.
I lean toward no.
Okay?
It never hurts to have information.
Okay.
That's a yes then.
That would be that. Mrs. Backup? Mr. Brzezinski?
Yes.
Mr. Bashad?
Look into it. It's the
Okay.
only way to solve the problem.
You've got that noted down.
And I guess, and I know Mrs. Dyker and I have been discussing, it's a twofold then, what we're looking for. As far as the facility needs, that would probably be a requirement from our architect and engineers to come in and look at our building and give us a determination of those items that they feel. I'll discuss it with them. There may be a fee associated with it because you're asking him to do a full study of what needs to be done. So just so we're clear, I don't want to give you the number. I don't think it'd be fair of Mr. Pontiliano to give you a number. And then you use it and then find out this is the way we're going to go. Then you bring in your architect and engineer and he says, you missed the boat altogether, folks. So just so we're clear with the building facilities part of it, I don't think it's fair on either he or I to be put in that situation and then we find out a year from now that we weren't even close. So,
Just get us accurate information.
so I'll get him that. As far as the staffing and all that, I have to turn to my counterparts on the other side of the room to see how to handle that part of it.
So if there is an architectural fee required for this,
It'll
you'll
come
come back
before
to
the
the
board.
next meeting to
Yeah.
get our approval before we proceed.
Yeah.
If not, you'll just proceed. Dr. Alfano, with regard to staffing, do you need any further direction from us, or is that good with regard to that issue? Okay?
I have just,
Sure.
before we move on, for the physical plant costs, I really don't want to just look at a cost. I'd like to have it broken down as much detail, for example, the water problem.
That's a
Like,
good
where's
point.
the water coming from and what we're going to do to fix it, not just, I don't want to.
And that's why I'm saying leave it to a professional to do more or less a full study of the issues that they may feel are necessary to bring the building to the level that's required. So yes, I agree with you. There may be a water level, a water pressure issue. Have them address it and see what their fix is, fix to it, and things of that nature. So have it done the proper way, not Dennis and I sitting and saying, we think it's $3 million for this, $2 million for this. I think it's more appropriate to have professionals deal with that for you.
Okay, any further questions on that?
Yes, Mr. DeAndrew, off the top of your head, do you know how many square feet that is, the Slover building?
For some reason, 35,000 square feet's in my head, but don't hold me to that.
Thank you.
Any other questions on B2?
Well, I'd like to make a comment on whether or not we want to open Silver.
Okay?
I could make that comment now?
Sure.
I think that you were thinking maybe 3 classes in each grade. And I just think that by the time that child hits either the UES or the middle school, you're talking 250 students rather than the 500 students that are in each of the other elementary schools. So I think that it gives them, kind of puts them behind the 8 ball, the Soroba students.
Mr. Sack, one other thing. When we had Land Associates as our architect, I have an email at home that they sent out to put an addition on Eisenhower back in '09 was either between $250 to $300 per square foot to put an addition on Eisenhower. Am I correct, Mr. DeAndrea?
That's probably in the neighborhood back in '09, yes.
And we got that one here as well, we're
And those
discussing
numbers
that
have
option too.
definitely changed now.
Okay.
All right. B3, and this was actually shared with me by a board member, so I said I would put it on the agenda. The approximate costs of demolishing Slover School and constructing a new school on the site, which shall include the size of the school and the staffing costs. Now, just to give you an idea, and keep in mind the numbers I'm going to quote are less accurate than what Mr. Bishada just quoted, but as a real back of the envelope, Mr. DeAndrea and I talked today, we figured to put an addition on that building and refurbish it, you're probably talking roughly $10 million. To level it and rebuild, you're probably talking twice that. And again, those are really rough numbers, but just to give you an order of magnitude. Is that something the board wishes to explore or not?
I want to bring up where that came from with the overruns at the high school. When you open up a wall of an old building, you're looking for trouble. And that was where that thought came from, that making the repairs may actually be more costly than building new.
Ask me if I want to add on to the school.
Oh, and that's why it's on the agenda, because when Mrs. Rakuya mentioned it, I said, you know what, I don't want to chair another addition committee.
Well, if we're gonna entertain the cost of demolishing it and rebuilding it, if we rebuilt it, I would only be interested in rebuilding it if it was larger and could house more students than the current building.
Oh,
So I can't see rebuilding it as it is.
And again,
It would be a new school.
I'm going to add at that point, if the direction is from the board, the majority say, yes, this is an option, you'll then have to sit with the administration and your architect and engineer and come up with a parameter of what he's going to look at. Is it going to be a school the size of Wilson? Or is it going to be the school the size of the UES or somewhere in between? Because then that gives him his direction on the site plan and things of that nature. So again, these are all things you start discussing now, and the first step is there an interest? But then now you bring them back and say, okay, now where do we go?
Because if I recall, we did the high school, putting that second floor was considerably less expensive than building out, wasn't it?
Yes, when you're going above, it's foundation work and things of that nature. So, and even when the high school, I was going back 8 years, probably better, when that discussion occurred, there was a discussion to actually demolish this building and move the building somewhere else, and we looked at the cost of that, and that came in like 120 million or 110 million to build a brand new school. So the route became take doing the renovation. So yes, those are all things you have to explore, but at that point, we were looking at a building that was a state-of-the-art building that continued to grow in cost, and similar to what happened down in Monroe. You know, they had a footprint, technology took over, that footprint stayed the same, but the interior started to add cost and things of that nature. So again, those are things you need to explore further if this is an option you're looking at.
I think this is premature until we find out, the first part is what it's going to cost to get the first test, before we decide if it's going to be more cost effective to knock it down.
It's a valid point.
Can't compare it if you don't have the figures.
Right, but the first cost is only going to be that we start to refurbish it as is with just the same size.
No increase.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think that may not be a bad, see what the first initial cost comes in at, and that may be something the board can say, you know what, that's a reasonable number. We're not really going to do much more than that. And then the second part is, so you can put that on hold then?
Well, let me pull the, Mr. Bishara, I'll start with you. Do you want the cost? Do you not want the cost? Do you want to defer?
To be very honest with you, I would rather see a cost estimate for both reconstruction and new construction.
So you would want the cost?
I think the public should know what we're looking at as far as down the road of having a school back online, so to speak.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
You're tracking this, right? Mr. Brzezinski?
I say we get both prices, as Mr. Bishad said, for the renovating and new. I would say from working in construction, I think it's gonna be more costly to renovate, but you never know. But I would entertain both prices.
Mrs. Backo?
I want both.
You want both? Mrs. Mercurio?
Both.
Mr. McEnroe?
Yeah, okay, it's not a sticker.
I'll do both. Mrs. Stroud?
I'll do both, and the only question along with that is, are we talking for the 250 students, or are we talking for 500 students?
And again, that'll be a discussion that we have once we talk to the architect as to how much he wants from the board before he comes back with the quote.
Right, but the thing is, when you get both, you have to put the same number of students in
Compare apples and
both
apples.
comparisons, so we're
And
comparing apples to
Well,
apples, I
that,
think that's the
believe
point
that,
here.
that's your problem. Cost of renovation is only gonna renovate the building to fit the 300 kids. My recommendation would be, if you're gonna do that, you do a new building at 300, just so you're comparing an apple to an apple. Now, if at that point in time you say, you know what, we really don't want to do 300, then look at the 500, because the numbers are close. Again, those are all further discussions you still have to have.
I would take it that we should just do both. Right, we go for the
All
500
three.
on both, because to compare
Oh.
the 300 to 300, I just don't see the value of
And
that.
again, once the architect's on board, we get through this, we'll have that further discussion and make sure that when he comes in, he'll speak to the committee or the full board, and we'll give him direction as a full board as to what the board is going to look for. He's not going to walk in tomorrow and be ready to roll with this.
Right,
This
so I
is a
think you're
problem.
going to see a different economy there, like whether you put a second floor on the current building or you build new and build 2 floors. I think you're going
Doubt
to
you'll
see.
be able to put a second floor on that building. The foundation probably isn't there, but
I will,
you never know.
but I'll come back to that point in a second. To finish the last query, Mr. Balka, you want
Yeah, I
both?
think you got them all.
Okay, so we want both. Now, in terms of what we want with both, what I'm hearing is whatever we do, they should be equal. And we can just spec out later what size building, et cetera.
Exactly.
But
That would be
is
perfect.
it my understanding from the board that we want an apples-to-apples comparison? We don't just want to create the old Slover with the same size and then get a spec for a new building at a larger size?
You have to, or you can't compare it.
Okay,
They
just
have to have
wanna make
general
sure that we
population.
all on the same page. Okay,
Got that.
got it. All right, so we're done with number 3. Number 4, detailed costs for the opening of Samsel as a K-5 and any residual costs to convert the remaining elementary schools to K-5. Is that a piece of information that we want?
Yeah. That's the whole essence of what I'm here.
I'm asking the question, I'm assuming. Mr. Bishada?
Basically, what my opinion is here, what you're looking at, we have the staff already. We have certified staff K through 5, we have certified staff all the way up to the high school. The issue that comes up is having the supplies available to all the schools that would be a K through 5 if we were to go that route, such as the library would have to be restaffed, the reading series would have to be, in the Samsel Elementary School, would have to be divided and sent to the 4 remaining elementary schools. That's basically where I see it. We have the staff. There's no problem there. It's just having the materials available for the students for their education in each one of the schools.
Okay, any other comments with regard to this item?
Yeah, well, I'm not particularly interested. I tell you, if that came back more cost effective, are we going to redistrict and change how we educate based on cost? Is that going to be the answer? See, I think a lot of times we focus on cost. I'm more interested in the value of things. Why would we do that? And that's really the crux of the matter. We're talking about all these things. But the bottom line is, we need to decide, are we going to stay in the current grade configuration we are now, or are we going to go to K through 5? All this other stuff is kind of elementary, no pun intended, but that's the real question, isn't it?
Mr. McEnroe?
That's the real question.
You're talking about educational value. If I'm correct here, I believe it was noted that the SUES has not met the standards for the last 2 years. They have a plan in operation to bring it up. There's certain issues that didn't perform correctly. Am I correct on that, Dr. Alfano?
It's specific to special education.
Is it just special ed?
All right,
You
that
have to
was-
be, you have to be careful that, on how we label that. There are many different categories of New Child Left, No Child Left Behind, as Mr. Aguilar was saying. I think they're performing at a very proficient level. The problem is that certain schools, whether it be East Brunswick or wherever, are schools that are in need of improvement. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're not moving up to the standards of any other school. And personally, I think Samson Upper Elementary School does a wonderful job, and all the schools do. So I agree with what Mr. McEnroe said. I agree that we have to work on our special education scores, and that's what's really driving a lot of our scores. And everyone in this room would say there's always room for improvement. And I'll be the first one to tell you that I would like to go through all of these and find out from an efficiency perspective, like Mr. Zayak has put up, to really find out exactly where we're at. And like a couple of the board members said, it doesn't hurt to get the information, because information is power. And I agree with Mr. McEnroe. I love the way he put it. It's not about cost, it's about value. And I think we get a huge bang for our buck in this district, no matter what we do. And I'm sure when we put this all together, that, I hope that we can make a decision. And that's going to be my other concern. I just don't want to, I want to make this clear to the board. We can't be spinning our wheels anymore. If we put this together, Mr. Zayak, you're talking about a monumental amount of central office time and money that's going to be put into this. My concern is at the end, where are we going? And I think there's a lot of people sitting here saying the same thing. So I don't want to just, an exercise in futility. And you have made it very clear that I say what I have to say. And I will go, and do everything that is said here. But there's a lot of work on here.
I agree. And the other part of this too is when it comes back to, when you do that work and it comes back to the board, the good part is there are 9 of us, and unless someone abstains, we should be able to reach a consensus, because we do have an odd number.
I'll do the work.
We can, and I think this is a true statement. If it's not, somebody let me know, you will. We can solve overcrowding without changing grade configuration. I've said this from the beginning. My feeling is we have something that works in Sanborn. I've been to the UES more often than any other school. And if you go there, first of all, I think it's one of our better schools. It's certainly well-led, and the faculty seems to be happy. And the reason I was looking at this paper, Ms. Bruno Rakuya asked me if I was looking for coupons. But I wasn't. There's 2 articles, and every week I pick up a paper, and I see an article, page 19, about the Samso Upper Elementary School Math Mania Day. Another one here about the Holocaust survivors that came in and speak. Those are things that you can do when you have a captive audience of those grades in the same building. And it's always been my contention, and I know there's some cogent arguments on the other side. I'm not an elementary school teacher, so I lend my expertise to those that do that, and we have a resident expert on the board. But I think any configuration that we do should be based on educational reasons, and not for money, not because of the funding. The other thing that I need to throw out there, and I should have mentioned it earlier, part of the redevelopment of the National Lead site includes $19 million that goes to the school district. As I don't want to say impact fee because those don't exist in New Jersey, but it's something the developer put into the redevelopment agreement with the borough. So that's $19 million that could satisfy, whether we rebuild Slover or whether we modify Slover. That's my take on this. And, I know there's some disagreement on the board, and that's fine. I'm excited that we're talking about educational-related things. But, we got something that works. I think, and I've had this conversation philosophically with Mrs. Rakulia many times, and I spoke to Kevin today about this. Whether you teach K-5 or a kid goes K-3, 4, 5, I think what happens at the end of that cycle in the 12th grade? Does a kid that gets educated in the K-5 configuration get better SAT scores than a kid that went K-3, then 4, 5, and wind up in a better college? I think that's the end game. And that's the kind of things, maybe I'm looking at a more macro approach, but I think philosophically, that's where I'm coming from with changing the grade configuration.
So what I hear you saying is you want to take K-5 off the table? I have to ask a question. Is that what you're saying, or do we still
I can
want to
repeat
explore?
what I just said.
No, look,
Yes.
okay,
It's always been my question.
okay, then I will poll the board on that one as well. I already started with the two
And
ends,
that's
so.
basically the question too, Kevin.
Yeah, do we want to take K, and that was one of the questions that was on here. Do we
Well,
want
that
to
is
take
the
K-5
question.
off the table?
Yes.
Before
Yeah,
you-
of course.
I just want to go back to, and I understand this is all about education, and you don't want to talk about cost, but of course, everything we do is a function of money. And I'm going to go back, and I think maybe we need to reword our original goal, because our original goal was to approve a cost-effective facility. So do we want to focus not on money and just ignore it? Because every other thing we did was based on cost up to now. Like, everything we looked at was cost of plan for staffing for Salover, cost of demolishing Salover, cost for opening SAMHSA, like, everything is revolving around cost. Do we want cost to be a driving factor or not? And that's what I'm trying to hear you say, that we should look at the cost.
Well, I'm not saying we should look at it. I think there's a trade-off. I live in a real world, not an abstract. I understand that that's a reality that we face in this fiscal environment. But even if you went to a different grade configuration, Slover is still going to be open down the road. You can't get away from spending that money on Slover. And that's why I was opposed to taking that money out of this school budget and putting it into all if, and I understood the need to do that, is to eventually, and that was our philosophy, every year put a couple $100,000 into that, so we're not hit with it all in one shot. So whatever you do, Slover is going to open, folks. It's going to open. And I think the more we push that out, the more expensive it's going to get. And then we're going to sit there and people are going to say, well, you had that building, you knew your population was growing, why didn't you get it open?
Right.
And you know that's going to happen.
I don't necessarily agree that Slover is definitely going to open, because I think another option is to add on to Eisenhower.
I'm not opposed to that. I'm not opposed to that.
So,
I just don't
I
see any
understand.
harm in getting the cost in every scenario, because I
And
think
that's
the
fine.
cost is going to, you have to remember, we have a 2% cap. We are going to be constrained by costs. Wherever we get this money from, you only have two choices: take it out of the existing 2% increase or go out with a referendum. That's really the only choices we have when it comes to cost.
If we do, look, it's understood that to stay in the configuration that we're in now, either an extension to Eisenhower would have to be done, or Slover would have to open.
Right.
Or you would be forced eventually into a K-5 to float more children into the UES. That's basically what I think you're trying to say here in number 5, is that if we don't do something with Slover, we're going to be forced into opening a K-5
Or Eisenhower.
because more kids are going to have to float into the UES.
Well, then, I'm willing to entertain a cost comparison with demolishing Slover, adding on to Slover, adding on to Eisenhower, and go with the cheaper alternative of that. I mean, I'm not opposed to that. I'm just opposed of reconfiguring the grades to solve an overcrowding problem.
Look, we're talking about efficiency, right? I mean, that's what it's all about here. And we have a building that has 15 open classrooms that aren't being used. 8 of them are ready to go right now. We could, the bottom line is that no matter how you want to look at it,
You're talking about
like you were saying, right, I'm talking about Slover, we were being chastised for not opening that building 3 or 4 years ago, and that we were concerned about, once again, that the building not open up as a school. We didn't want to lose that label.
I have a question.
And I think we have an opportunity now that we're letting go, that we can make, obviously, I mean, I see Truman School that's exploding out of the seams now, that we're going to have to go into that building right now, and we're going to have to reconfigure that building because it was built in the 70s in the open environment. So no matter what, we're going to have to do something to that effect to get more kids into that building and make the first graders more comfortable. We're being forced into right now because of overenrollment. Mrs. Coffey just basically told us they have 141, 142 first graders. But because of the configuration in that building, we have to add another first grade teacher because we can't go over 20, because those rooms are too small. So we have to start to take a look at the configuration. The only thing we're trying to do here is, I agree with you, and I like the way this is set up. Information is power, and I think the more information we get, I think we can make a more accurate decision. And I think this is a good thing. And I'm not, I don't want to get into, I don't have all the answers. I'm not going to sit here and say to you how much it's going to cost to open up Slover, how much it's going to cost to put in addition on the back of Eisenhower. How many classrooms do you want to put on? Eisenhower's a problem to begin with. You'd have to reconfigure that whole building back there because right now it's difficult to get cars in and out of that building. I mean, right now, I know Mr. Fury's not here, but I know that was his biggest issue. You dump another 20 classrooms, 15 classrooms on the back of that building, you're going to have to find another route to get people out of there. So that's my other concern, safety. We're not only looking at efficiency, we're looking at safety. We're looking at the efficient running of these buildings.
So Mrs. Strapp had a question, and I'll bring it back to the consensus I was looking for.
Okay,
Mrs. Strapp.
okay. So, how many preschool classes do we have currently at Slover?
Slover has
Well,
none.
again,
No,
let's,
they have,
let's not
the
say
night-
preschool,
the adult school.
the adult program, there are two.
Right, so
Only
two at the end? Two. So, is it an option to maybe open up a few more classrooms and have more preschool, which could bring in more money? Could that help at all?
See, we're right back to where we were. It doesn't really help our situation. You
No,
still
I-
have, we're looking at the efficient planning of this. If I take preschool and move them back into Slover, I still have the same issue. I still have overcrowding in the elementary schools that I still have to deal with.
Right.
So no matter how I do that, I still have to deal with that issue.
Right, so you were saying that you have 20 classrooms that are not being utilized.
I wouldn't say 20, about 15 or so.
Okay, so that way we could utilize some more of them. And then the other question that I have is, or the other comment is, right now we have some Morgan students going to Truman. Maybe we would, to decrease some of the students over there, we could move them over to Eisenhower, well, if we do add on to Eisenhower. So that's,
Well, you're gonna have to
But we have to
redistrict,
spend-
there's no doubt about that.
All right,
But
so
Mr. Sayake, if I could.
Yes.
And you and I spoke that we would try to work together
Yes.
today. The true question is, the question that you have, is there an interest from a majority of the board to convert the upper elementary school to a K-5 building?
and proceed with getting the information.
Well, just to get the cost.
Right, to get the cost.
Yeah, just get the cost.
Get
Yeah,
the cost.
Yes. So again, I started at the both ends already, so Mr. Falcon, I'll start with you again. You're a yes, Mrs. Strapp?
You forgot me.
No, I'm starting with somebody different each time, so it's nobody's always on the spot.
So no one ever comes on the spot.
Yes, this is just to get the information for a K-5 configuration. Mr. McEnroe?
What?
Yes or
Well, I
no?
apologize.
I'm not interested in
Mr.
I
questions.
said
I'm
yes.
Mrs. Rakuya?
Knowledge is power.
Okay,
Yes.
Mr. Brzezinski?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm a no on this one.
You forgot one.
Oh, so, I'm sorry.
I'm like the stepchild.
I'm sorry. Yes.
I agree that knowledge is power, but I say no. I think that changing the academics that are working right now, just for money, doesn't work for me. The UBS is a great transition to school for our district. No.
Sixth grade, we're getting to the-
And we'll work collectively somehow.
Because it could.
I guess at some point yes, and
But that will
collectively, we're gonna have to sit and figure out
But that will
how
happen
to pull
whatever.
this all together.
Right.
You know, you have to transport students.
I know, but some would probably have higher transportation costs.
I'm gonna tell you.
You'd have to look at the redistricting, you're right, you'd have to look at, because that's gonna also add to number 6. Because when you actually move these kids around, what is that gonna create? Is it gonna create an achievement, transportation problem? So exactly what you're saying is true. It may create more transportation
Right.
costs, it may create
And
an achievement problem.
that transportation cost may be more difficult to establish because we would have to look at it, but we'll look at it. I'll work with Mrs. Shedlock to come up with something.
It's gonna
Yeah,
what
it
is
could just be a
reasonable.
high, I'm not looking for
I
penny
mean,
to penny, just
the
if
good
any of
part
these
is-
will cause a bigger transportation issue than others.
The good part is that the upper elementary right now is almost 100% busing. No matter where the kids are coming from, it's going to be 100% busing anyway.
But
So-
it will be minimal cost.
Yes.
And also you have to understand, if you went and you improved Slover and you brought students in there, now you're not spending busing all those kids out of Morgan to other schools they can walk to.
Yes,
So,
there is,
so
most likely,
that may negate any.
the first look we did look at it, that if you would open up Salover as a neighborhood school, you would see a decrease in transportation costs because those students are going to either Olive, Truman, and Eisenhower, and I may have them mixed up a little bit, but those students are going there, and there are students in other parts that may wind up there, but we believe that would be a decrease, but again, until you establish the final routes, it's all hard to pinpoint.
Gotcha.
Okay. And we're all in favor, I'm assuming, of the Eisenhower information, so we're good with that. Number 6, and I think this would apply not only for the K-5, but I think for any solution that we go through. Can we get the information based upon how the students that are achieving and how we're reconfiguring them to make sure that we are not creating a school in need of improvement simply by the way we're drawing the lines and the maps?
And I think the work Mrs. Backo and the committee did, we was very in tune with not doing that.
Right.
We did try our best.
But I think what I'm, because this was actually mine, what I'm suggesting on this one is that we go one step further and say, okay, you've drawn the lines, you've done your best effort based upon what you know in the line drawing. We have all this data from NJ Smart and all the testing data. Can we actually take those kids, put them in the new configuration and see specifically what the scores and what the achievement would look like?
Why couldn't
Can
you?
you do that easily?
I leave that to you guys.
There's a couple of things. One is, it can be done, but are you looking for the old configuration of NCLB? Because the new one wouldn't have them as a school in need of improvement. So it does change it. So yes, it can be done using, that's problem number one is, do you want it based on the old standard of NCLB, or do you want it projected on what we're currently working with?
Do we want to reword this to simply denote equitable academic achievement? So that it's not tied to any particular standard?
Well, do you want it based on the NJS scores? Is that specifically what you're asking for?
I think that would work.
Yeah, because then you have something definitive.
Right, but then you have to understand, we only have NJS scores for students in grades 3, 4, and 5. Those would be, and then we'd be looking at the students. We're not going to have that much data because the students, let's say in 2 years, who would be in grades 3, 4, and 5, we don't have that data for most of those students currently. So we can,
I don't think that information is due yet until we figure out what we're going to be doing.
Right.
Okay, so we want to defer this one.
I would defer, unless anybody has a disagreement.
We were very careful with what we looked at.
Okay. All right, so we'll defer this one then until we come up with a particular solution, and then we can field test it.
Can I go back to the addition onto Eisenhower? Now that that was asked, what would be the plan when if you're going to look at a cost of an addition? Like, wouldn't you need a basis of size of an addition to come up with that?
Again, we're going to,
That'll probably be round 2 of this.
right,
Okay.
there is, everything you're doing tonight is definitely going to have a round 2 as to when we bring the architect and engineer in. So are we looking for 20 rooms, 10?
Because I have to agree with Dr. Alfano, a large addition there is going to be a major problem.
Yes.
Because there is a safety issue already with the
Well, you may
with the
not be able
cars
to do
and
it.
stuff. Right.
The borough may not approve off on the plan unless you have some type of egress and ingress.
And just for the board, I still have those maps if anyone needs to refresh their mind. I do have those maps still in my office.
Okay. Last item is, at the appropriate time, an administrative recommendation and educational rationale which shall be reached through consultation with district teachers and support staff in the elementary, Samsel, and middle school level. We all agree with that?
Makes sense.
Did we forget parents? Parents and taxpayers.
Yeah, parents.
Yeah.
Parents?
Yes.
Okay. Want to add in parents?
Okay, question about parents. Was there a phone call went out to parents to come tonight? I mean, I didn't get one, but.
No.
Just on
No,
Facebook.
no,
on Facebook.
Not.
That's more accurate.
So we only invited staff, not the parents?
I didn't find any.
No,
I didn't.
No, there was an email that went out to the
Yes.
staff. So I just wanted to know if we sent this, we didn't send anything out to the parents.
The email that went out to the staff was more, I think, reactionary, in that Dr. Alfano was informed, as Mr. McEnroe and myself, that, many people were very, very concerned about this meeting. So we wanted to kind of manage expectations up front and let the staff know what was going on. So that was the purpose of the email.
right, and parent-wise, it was out there on Facebook, and last night at our PIC meeting, we did mention it also.
What was
All
the
three
attendance at the
people.
three?
No, actually, we were. Yeah, 6, I'm thinking there was
Double.
Board members have no.
almost double digits.
Okay, Chris.
They're raised now.
Okay? So we've got parents in on number 7. Is there any other information which the board is looking for regarding this topic?
Mr. Sykes, before that, Mrs. Eichner, I think this might be appropriate to speak about the gentleman that we spoke to, Dr. Bowen. And I don't, you want to start?
Okay, well, over the months that we've been talking about it, I know we've been trying to come up with ways to come up with a lot of this information and the dollar amounts for different things, and it's really very difficult to do that for staffing, for supplies, and so on. And I know we have the demographer study, but there are, I have heard of other districts that have done, well, have contemplated different moves like this and what would be the best thing to do. And we found a company that does studies similar to what we are looking at here. They did it for South Plainfield.
One of the Plainfield, I always get them mixed up.
I think it was South Plainfield. They did an almost identical study. I believe they also did one for West Windsor, Plainsboro.
Right.
So we called this gentleman, and he came in and he spoke to us, and he said certainly they could do something like this, because we thought maybe someone from the outside who has experience with this and could present a report with a lot of this information that you're looking for. So, and I think that you talked to him a little bit more in depth about some of the
Right, and
things.
one of the ones that with the South Plainfield, they were looking to do similar things, but they were experiencing growth and moving to a different types of environment, preschool setting, K-3, and different configurations. And he more or less came in with the educational component and some other cost components, but of that nature. Is that something that this board would entertain? Obviously, he would have to come back with a total cost proposal and that nature, and he even indicated it could depend on what level we're looking for, accordingly addresses his fee. So we met with him, it was a good conversation. He's currently an interim director interim superintendent in 2 school districts in Bergen County, a regional and a local K-8 that he's working through. And is that something that the board wishes to hear about to help with this decision-making? And again, as Mrs. Eichner said, it's not the administration now coming forth, it's someone who's done this before to tell you from what his research and analysis has told him as to what configurations may or may not work. And we're not exactly sure if he'll be able to attach specific dollar amounts to it. That would be, he said yes, then his report came in and it really didn't say yes. Is that something the board would entertain looking at as a possibility as we move forward? And Mrs. Eichner and I can work with him and see if, get a better proposal together?
Before I poll the board, does anybody have any questions about that?
Would he just gather data, or would he make a proposal?
Well, the first step would be the proposal to tell you how much it's going to cost for him to put his report together.
Would he
And
just make
then-
a report, or would he
Then
give us
what he said was,
recommendations?
Would he give us a
would give-
recommendation or just data?
He'd give you data and recommendations that he finds based on that data that he pulls together. He's already indicated some of the things we spoke about that he's already done research for.
So he would be pulling all of this data together that's on this?
Some of this, but his would be more educationally based.
It would be this plus education. It would be a combination.
He looked at the scores and.
I believe he might.
We could ask him
Well,
that.
what can he do that we can't do in-house with our own administrative team?
I guess the key became that he was doing a lot of the research base and things of that nature. That's what I got from him.
That,
And he's done.
I think to a certain extent, the definition of an expert is someone who's not currently employed and not in the particular situation that you're dealing with. So it would be an external perspective that would hopefully be a little more unbiased or neutral.
What kind of cost is that?
We don't know. We did not get into cost because as he indicated, depending on how much of the study you want,
Well,
derives this cost.
There's no cost for him to tell us his cost.
No.
All right, so when we hear that, then we'll decide whether. we
And
want to-
I guess the good part is that we have a basis to go back to him with now and say, these are the kind of things we're looking at. Is this something you can put together a proposal for the board so that you can give a full detailed report to him? And from what I understand, he did do that for South Plainfield. 300-page report, I think he said, or something
I
like
don't
that.
know.
So he gave him a detailed report.
All right, is anyone opposed to doing that? Okay. Any other items that we need, any other information that we need?
Just want to share this with you. There were some comments at the last meeting that indicated that a upper elementary school configuration was an enigma and was unique to Sayreville. Actually, there are 87 upper elementary schools in the state of New Jersey. 30 of them are configured in a 3-5, 24 in just a 4-5, 17 and 4-6. 8 of them are 3-6, 7 are 3-4. The bottom line is there are different configurations of upper elementary schools in different districts. Some of them have 3 schools in the same building as well. So the fact that this is only unique to Sayville, there's 87 of them, which puts one in at least every county in the state. So I just wanted to throw that out. Anything else, Mr. Facilitator?
No, just one final point, because I think everybody should know where their elected officials stand on everything. Mr. McEnone and I worked this out because we agreed that we needed someone to facilitate this discussion. So when he was speaking tonight, he also shares my views on this particular issue, which also allowed me to facilitate without getting involved in a confrontational or passionate argument. So his job was to provide the passion, my job was to just simply facilitate. But that's all I have, and I'll turn it back to you.
Any other board discussion?
Well,
before I
we've
open
got
it up?
one,
What did I forget?
back page,
Oh, you're double-sided.
have we run them? Item number C.
Oh,
probably the
the
most
most
important
important
one.
What's the mutually agreeable timeline for the providing this information?
Next meeting.
I think you can, next meeting. We expect
I think I'm
a
right now.
draft report on Friday. I think you can come back to us safely at the next meeting with the proposals from the architect and the expert that you were looking at. Is that
Hopefully we can
reasonable?
pull hopefully we can pull that together. I mean, we'll work on that, yeah. Try to get something for at least the 2 proposals from the.
Now, our next meeting is not until the 28th.
28th.
Correct, so you've got basically the whole month. Does that work for anybody? I don't know, until we get that information, I don't know if we can set any further specific timelines from that.
We'll see what happens at that.
Correct.
Everybody
Everyone's okay with that?
Okay.
Back to you in the studio.
No, non-SmackDown.
I just want, a couple things. Being on the finance committee and working with the budget, last year we only were allowed to raise $1.1 million. That was the 2% cap, okay? The second item that I know it's gonna affect everyone in this town is that the business administrator downtown put an application in for 225 homes that have bought out by the state. I did a calculation again, I like playing with numbers, and if those houses sell back to the government for $300,000, that's a tax rate loss of $67,500,000. If they only pay them $200,000 for the 225 homes, that's a $45 million tax loss to the borough of Surrey. So I'm just, our hands are going to be tied financially. I know we are about education, but we have a cost factor that's always hanging over our heads. Our heads are on a guillotine, just waiting for it to happen.
Well, I agree. That's going to be a uphill problem. If there was no additional cost, if you just looked at a 2% cap, there's going to be a point in time down the road where you will not be able to fund what you're currently funding. If you can only raise the tax levy by 2%, you're not going to be able to provide what we're providing today. So there has to be some solution. I would agree, I think Mrs. Backler hinted about it. Because one of the options, if we decide we have to add on to a school, obviously it's gonna have to be a referendum. There's no doubt about it. And we'll see how it goes. But you're right, and that's the fiscal reality.
Mr. Mackin, I just need to comment. The ratables does not affect our tax increase for us. So the ratables can drop. You still are allowed to increase your tax levy by the 2%.
Correct.
The ratables may drop
Right.
50 million,
And
but
we'll
we
wind
still
up
get
like
our
East Brunswick.
1.1 or 1.2 to increase by.
I don't think the people in Several would want to see what happened to East Brunswick, where they were $30 million they lost in revenue taxables, and their property taxes for the school budget for the current year is $223, $228.
Right, but that was mainly due to a ratable decrease, not that the school board tried to increase their taxes by that.
Well, that would be the same thing if we lost
Right.
these
But that's not
225
an
homes.
impact. You still can grow by your 2%, is what I want to make sure that everyone is
Well,
clear
I
about.
totally agree.
What the tax impact becomes is a different story. But your tax increase for your budget-wise still stays at that 2%, regardless of your ratables.
Correct.
Mr. McEnroe? I missed one item that Mrs. Backo brought up, but I would like to return to it. On the goal statement, do we want to include that the Board of Education will approve a cost and educationally effective facility solution? I think the word education
Yep.
should probably be in the goal. Is anyone opposed to adding that word?
Cost-effective education.
The Board of Education will approve a cost and educationally effective facility solution.
So it's not just based on cost.
So it's not just based on cost.
And educationally effective. I apologize for misleading.
That's it, just a cost
Will
and
approve a
educationally
cost
And education.
effective facility solution.
And educationally
Okay.
effective. facility.
Any other comments?
I need to say one more thing, just to follow up on what Beth had said with the UES, is that I'm very pleased with the UES. And as much as I'm all for getting a cost on it, because knowledge is power, I definitely would like to keep the 4-5. So, okay.
All right, if there's no other board discussion. At this time, I'd like to open up to the public for any comments or any information, business that may be coming before this board. If anybody would like to speak, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, smile for the camera. Anyone? Okay,
We have one.
too late, ma'am, I'm sorry.
I have a few concerns.
Please state your name and
My
address for
name
the
is
record.
Kristen Zori. I live on Garfield Place. My children go to Truman and UES. I have 2 students in Truman. I have 1 in UES. The 2 students who go to Truman don't even have a classroom. I would like someone that was here to maybe walk in the eyes of our children. My kids don't have a classroom. They have partitions. You hear every voice, every sound. They don't have a door. They don't have a closet. So you're talking about the numbers? They both were exposed. They both had 30 kids in their kindergarten classes. My 4th grader, who's just recently got the opportunity to go on a bus, because we live in the Truman district, is doing wonderful. He loves the school. It's great. He thinks it's wonderful. He never had a classroom until the 3rd grade. So he went from an atmosphere of no classroom to this big, huge building. I personally think they're too young. I think the way the district is, the 9-year-old is now being treated like he's a middle schooler. It's just different. You know what I mean? It's a big school. I think K-5 would work. As a parent, I think K-5 would work, because I think that when you're 9, you're still a little kid. You know what I mean? You're a little kid. So now you're going to this big school with all the kids in the town. You're not having that hometown feelings anymore. You miss out on it. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
Can
Thanks.
I reply to that, Mrs. McEnroe?
Sure.
I agree with you on that, because I did a little research on that, and for 6 years, a K-5 child has stability. That's number one.
Absolutely.
Number 2, the child is in the same environment where they feel very comfortable with. There's less pressure on that child for those years, because the peer pressure as they get into the UES, testosterone starts kicking in, there's other issues that kick in, you wind up with problems, and you wind up with bullying, Again, another thing, I think a K through 5 is a better learning experience, what I've read about. And I've heard from other people that are teachers, not within Cerebral, but in other districts. And with K through 5, you would have better control of class size. This is another issue that was brought to my attention. But I agree with you.
Anybody else from the board?
Nikki Hastings, I live on Albert Drive. My daughter is at Arliss School currently, and I have to say I disagree with the K through 5. You brought up the bullying aspect of it. I feel like when you have 5th graders in the same school with kindergarten and 1st graders, I think there's going to be a lot more bullying incidents. They're going to feel like they have the right, they're bigger, they're stronger, you know, their numbers are bigger. Breaking it down to the K through 3 and then letting them bridge in the upper elementary before they get to the middle school, I think is a great learning environment for them. And yes, from what I have heard, the UES is a tough school, and I think from the kids that I have spoken to that are in the middle school and in the high school, they felt like the UES prepared them a lot better for what they had, what's in store for them at the middle school and the high school. And when you keep them together K through 5 and then you put them in the middle school, they're not going to be as well prepared. I feel like the upper elementary teachers do a great job of preparing the kids for what's in store. I teach in a high school district, and I can tell you that some of the kids get there and they're still babies. And they're, you know, it's all on what's going on at home also. And I think a lot of parents think that sports and extracurricular activities come before education. And I think that that is a lot of the bad rap that the UES gets, that there's too much homework, that they're pressured to help those kids excel. And I think the parents need to think about education first and not what's going on outside of school.
Anyone else from the board?
Hi, Lisa Reback, Charles Street. I think you guys know already, I teach in another district. It's a K to 5 district. I'm currently a 7th grade teacher, but I did spend 3 years in 6th grade, and it was not pleasant. Like the other parent just said, teaching 6th grade in a K to 5 district is difficult because the parents still view, you know, anytime your kid makes a change to another school building, you still view them as your babies. And the 6th grade is a difficult level, and my children, my daughter is at Eisenhower, and my son is in 4th grade at the UES. My son does not have an easy time with school, and I have had nothing but fantastic experiences at the UES with him, with his teachers. He was actually here at the last meeting, and what they've been able to pull out of him makes me so happy. And I have not seen him required to do more than I think he's comfortable with. As a matter of fact, I've been happy that they've been more lenient with him than I would expect. If, you know, I taught 5th grade once, and, you know, I'm very strict with my kids, and I expect more out of them, and, sorry, I hate talking like this, and, so I've been so happy with the experiences that he's had there, and the expectations of him, and I have not seen that he is given tons of homework every night, and he complains. Of course, he would rather have no homework, and he'd rather sit in front of the TV and play video games, and that's not reality, and we've broken that into him. Speaking about the test scores that were brought up about the UES, I have to tell you, in my district, the other middle school is currently a school in need of improvement because their high scores were too far of a ratio from the low scores. And so when people hear that they're a school in need of improvement or they haven't met their standards, I don't think that everybody understands all the different ways a school cannot meet their standards. And I don't think it's fair to say that because, again, the UES is doing their job. Mrs. Brady and Ms. Marr have been amazing. And I think I've told Mrs. Brady at least once a month how much I adore her and how fantastic she's been with my son. Again, you know, the K-5 district, is the UES ready for kindergartners? You know, some of those doors are difficult for 4th graders to open. You're going to have kindergartners opening those doors. Are all of the facilities ready for little kids. As opposed to, like, I know somebody had mentioned about having kids in a K to 5, it's a smaller environment, they get to know other people. And I know, I think by the end of 3rd grade, I think my son was ready to meet other people. There was, he was in Eisenhower, which is a very big school, and he has found new friends outside of our immediate area that he really likes. And I think that's important for kids that aren't socially comfortable. So, on the record, I oppose the K to 5 plan.
All those things you mentioned about the infrastructure within the building that's not catered to smaller kids, which is designed for 4th and 5th graders, are things that are factored into that cost that you would have to, bathroom fixtures is a perfect example. Because there's a difference between a kindergarten and a 9-year-old. And a bathroom fixture, I'm thinking.
I have a niece who's 4 who weighs 26 pounds. I can't imagine her in 2 years going to, I mean, she doesn't live around here, but I'm just thinking,
I know that when my kids came home, they said, I have 2 hours of homework. And I said, good. And I say that seriously, and I'm not just getting on a soapbox here. Education is very important, and I know we talk about money, and Mr. Bashad is right, there's a cost to everything. But I always felt that education costs the society more, but ignorance will cost us more. And if, I've been to, several different countries, and you look at their philosophy of education. If you were in another country, let's say Japan or India or China, no one would come to a microphone at a board meeting and say, my kid gets too much homework. They would be shunned. When I was a little kid, and I'm older than probably most people in this room, my parents used to always say things that are silly. My mother's still alive, and I tell her these things, eat all your vegetables because people in other countries are starving. I would tell my kids, do all your homework because people in other countries are starving for your job, and that's the reality of public education. Now we have to get a public education, and you got to prepare these kids to go out there because you're competing. You go into industry, you go into aerospace companies, and you're seeing less and less and less of Americans. That's your competition out there. So if some parent tells me my kid's getting too much homework, I call the principal and congratulate them. When I first went into UES, I remember seeing a sign. And this was like my first year on the board, because there's a lot of, my kids didn't go to UES. It wasn't developed, built yet. So when I went into that school, I saw a sign, and I remember it says, college starts here. And that struck me to be how true that is. Now I have a daughter that's in a college difficult major now, and she's stanky. She's doing things like organic chemistry, and I'm looking at that, so do you understand that? She says, yeah, I learned this in high school. That's the best content, and that's what we need to do. That's the reality. In the 21st century in education. And we need to do more of that. More academic rigor, and it has to happen. That's the best gift we can give our children. I had this conversation with my mother, who's a senior citizen. She's in her 80s, and she talks about the cost of education. I said, when you were working and Dad was working, when I was going to school, you were actually paying more based on the percentage of what you were making to educate me than people are doing. And that's a reality. It's just the way it is. And that's why I got involved in this business. That's my passion. So I appreciate the comments, and I agree with you. Anyone else in the public like to speak?
Hi, I'm Joyce Ken from Yacht Report. I just have a quick question. A couple of us were wondering, is the latest reconfiguration of the mapping that's set right now, is that set in stone, or is that something that's going to be looked at as far as, the possibility of 225 homes being lost to the state? Majority of those homes, the kids do go to Wilson, so is that set in stone right now?
It's set in gel. That was just our first shot at it, where we thought made sense knowing the town. And the whole idea, and Ms. Backo took the lead with that, and it was really a good job. And the whole idea, the whole thinking behind that was, how do we inconvenience the least amount of kids? By drawing circles, as a conference example, everybody's with you, we go to that school, and we try to keep as many people in the current school. You're right, if you lose a neighborhood, which you very may well do, you may have to remap to fill that school. You may have to do that. So the answer to the question, hardly stone. I mean, that's no.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, thank you. Anybody else, madam?
Michelle Barnsley, 28 William Street. I have 3 children, one in kindergarten, one a junior in high school, and one an 8th grader in the middle school. So I've been through the Sanford school system at every grade level a couple times. I also am a graduate of Cerebral High School. I went through the elementary system when it was K through 6, and then 7 through 9 at the junior high. My experience has been with my kids that when they got to the upper elementary school, neither one of them were very happy at first. I think they felt like, and I sort of felt too, I think in K through 3, they're very coddled. Their teachers really take care of them, which is what you want. It's an elementary school. And sort of, it was this major switch in 4th grade. You know, they were, if you forgot a homework assignment, you got a pink slip. And, you know, it was a really hard transition for my children. But more, I guess, of what I'm concerned with is I don't want my kindergartner to be in a class with 30 children. She's not right now. We're in Wilson. We're very lucky. She's in a kindergarten class of 18 children. I love the school. But, you know, you have to realistically, okay, these are going to be 2 and 3 bedroom units that they're building in the Point. You still are not fully built out in Town Lake. They're also building condos. I mean, realistically, you can't expect that just because it's a 3-bedroom, there's only going to be 2 children. You know, people have 4 kids. They'll put 2 in one bedroom, 2 in the other bedroom. So how are you coming up with the numbers is, I guess.
I mean, the developer, there's some models that everybody agrees on in development and planning that you can use based on a lot of different things, the location and of course the cost of these things. These townhouses that are going to be 3 bedrooms, I don't envision people, you know, dropping $600,000, $700,000, you know, that have kids, you know, it's going to be priced. There's going to be kids, and there's going to be a number of kids that we have to plan for. But what grades they are, we have no idea. You know, we don't know what, you know, high school kids, are they going to be elementary school kids? A lot of these facilities that they're building, you know, there aren't a lot of amenities for kids. I mean, they're not building playgrounds and those types of things if you look at the plan. So it's hard to tell. You know, we have to take our best guess. I believe there's going to be 300 to 400 kids. There's no doubt about it. And then the other question that never factors: what happens when people resell? We have no control over who they're reselling and who's going to come in. So it's a concern and it's something that we have to plan for. There's no doubt about it. But I can't tell you if they're going to be elementary school age or high. I don't know.
Right.
We won't know until they're here. And you're right. Town Lake has another 100 homes to build. They opened up that, I think it's Whitehead Avenue that goes through now. Also, a lot of people don't understand about Lemire. There's still 2 sections of Lemire to be done. Okay, and there's others, you know, little developments further down on Renton Road, and all those. Absolutely.
I mean, I think my biggest concern as a parent is that, you know, this is coming. I mean, and I don't think that we can wait and just keep going over plans and saying, okay, what's gonna, you know, I just think we need to look at quality. Cost, of course, is gonna come into play, but really, you know, just think about the kids. Keep the kids in mind, keep the parents in mind, and, you know, really, for me, it's K through 5, I think would be great. I think, you know, that's how I went to school, K through 6. I was fine, I went to the junior high, had no problems, you know, but I think that really you have to just look at whatever is going to be best for the growth and be realistic about the growth. And that's it.
I remember your kids when they were really.
Yeah, my son's gonna be graduating next year.
Thank you.
Mr. McEnroe, if I could, I'm not sure if many people in the community understand what the demographer's report actually did for the board. Because the demographer's report actually addresses exactly what the lady has indicated. The demographer takes current statistical information and it looks at live births, and based on statistical information, that's how they start determining the number of people you have in your district. They don't specifically say you'll have another 30 in Wilson and things of that nature, but they pull all that information, and the board has received that report. So they do have an indication of somewhat, based on the development that has been on the planning board.
We have numbers.
And there's real numbers that, I shouldn't say real numbers.
We don't have grades specifically. We have
Right, you have
and what
numbers
these
that-
demographers do is they look at other developments that may be similar to the Point and say this is what they produce. So we're assuming this is going to produce like it's not an exact science. And when we did the demography report for Town Lake and parts of Lemire, it didn't exactly match what the demographer said. So So you have to take your best shot, and the 19 million would help, there's no doubt about that.
Sounds
If we
like the
get-
cost of a new school.
Anyone else in the public like to speak? Seeing none, I'll take a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Thank you very much.